The morning sun was shining through the tall windows of Windsor Castle. It was Tuesday, March 15th, and everything seemed normal. The birds were singing in the gardens, and the staff was busy with their daily work. Nobody knew that this day would change everything. James Mitchell had been a royal guard for 8 years. He was a tall man with kind eyes and a serious face. He loved his job and was proud to protect the royal family. Every morning he walked the same path around the castle. He checked doors, looked at windows, and made sure everything was safe. James started his morning patrol at 7 o'clock. He walked slowly through the long hallways of the castle. His black shoes made soft sounds on the marble floor. The castle was quiet except for the sound of cleaning staff working in distant rooms. As James walked past the Queen's private area, he saw something that made him stop. A door that should have been locked was open. This was not right. The Queen's private rooms were supposed to be secure at all times. James had been trained to check these things carefully. He walked closer to the door and looked inside. The room was empty, but James knew he had to report this. He took out his radio to call his supervisor. But before he could speak, he heard footsteps behind him. "What are you doing here?" A voice said sharply. James turned around and saw Queen Camilla walking toward him. She was wearing a blue dress and her face looked angry. James had seen the Queen many times before, but she had never looked at him like this. "Your Majesty," James said politely. He bowed his head as he had been taught. "I was checking the security of this area. I found this door open." "That door is fine," Queen Camilla said. Her voice was cold. "You don't need to be here." James felt confused. He was just doing his job. All guards were supposed to check doors and windows. This was part of keeping the royal family safe. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," James said, "but I need to report this. The security rules say that all doors in this area must be locked." Queen Camilla's face became red with anger. She stepped closer to James. "I don't care about your rules," she said loudly. "I am telling you to leave this area right now." James felt uncomfortable. He had never seen Queen Camilla act this way. In public, she always seemed calm and nice, but now she looked very different. "Your Majesty, I understand," James said carefully, "but I have a job to do. I need to make sure everything is safe." "Safe?" Queen Camilla laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. "You think you know about safety? You are just a guard. You don't tell me what to do." James tried to stay calm. He had been trained to handle difficult situations. But this was the Queen. He didn't know what to do. "I'm not trying to tell you what to do," James said quietly. "I'm just following the security rules that protect you and your family." This made Queen Camilla even more angry. She moved closer to James until she was standing very close to him. James could see the anger in her eyes. "How dare you speak to me like that?" she said. Her voice was shaking with anger. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, Your Majesty," James said. "You are Queen Camilla, and I am here to protect you." "Protect me?" Queen Camilla shouted. "From what?" "From you snooping around my private areas." James felt his heart beating fast. Other guards had told him stories about difficult situations, but nothing like this. He tried to think of what his training had taught him. "Your Majesty, please," James said. "I was not snooping. I was doing my job." The open door could be a security risk. "Security risk?" Queen Camilla's voice got even louder. "You want to know about security risks? You are the risk?" Then something happened that James would never forget. Queen Camilla suddenly moved toward him very fast. She pushed him hard with both hands. James was surprised and stepped backward. He almost fell down. "Get out!" Queen Camilla screamed. "Get out of here right now!" But James did not move fast enough for her. Queen Camilla came at him again. This time she was like a wild animal. She pushed him again, harder than before. James felt scared. He had never been attacked by anyone he was supposed to protect. "Your Majesty, please stop," James said. He put his hands up to protect himself. "I don't want any trouble," but Queen Camilla was not listening. She seemed to have lost control completely. She tried to hit James with her hands. James had to step back to avoid being hurt. "I said get out," Queen Camilla yelled. Her face was very red and her hair was messy. You have no right to be here. James heard footsteps coming down the hallway. 2 other guards were running toward them. They had heard the shouting. "What's happening here?" asked Guard Thompson, who was James's friend. Queen Camilla turned to look at the other guards. For a moment, she seemed to realize what she was doing. Her face changed, and she tried to fix her hair. "This guard was bothering me," Queen Camilla sighed. She was breathing hard. He was asking too many questions about things that are not his business. James looked at his friends. He could see they were confused. They knew James was a good guard who always followed the rules. "Sir," Guard Thompson said to James, "is everything okay?" James didn't know what to say. He couldn't believe what had just happened. The Queen had attacked him. "But who would believe this story?" "I was checking security," James said slowly. "I found an open door and was going to report it." "There was no problem with any door," Queen Camilla said quickly. "This guard was being rude to me. He wouldn't leave when I asked him to." James felt sick. Queen Camilla was lying about what happened. But she was the queen. Who would believe a guard over her? "Your Majesty," Guard Thompson said carefully, "we're sorry for any confusion. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again." Queen Camilla looked at James with angry eyes. "Make sure it doesn't," she said. Then she walked away, her high heels clicking loudly on the floor. When Queen Camilla was gone, the other guards looked at James. They could see he was upset. What really happened? Guard Thompson asked quietly. James looked at his friends. These were good men who had worked with him for years. They deserved to know the truth. "She attacked me," James said. "The Queen attacked me for doing my job." The guards looked shocked. They had never heard of anything like this happening before. "Are you sure?" asked the other guard, whose name was Peters. "I'm sure," James said. "She pushed me and tried to hit me. She was screaming and acting crazy." The 3 guards stood in the hallway, not knowing what to do. This was not something they had been trained for. "How do you report that the Queen attacked a guard?" "We need to tell someone," James said. "This can't be ignored." But as James spoke these words, he didn't know how much his life was about to change. He didn't know that speaking the truth would make him an enemy of some very powerful people. All he knew was that what happened was wrong, and someone needed to know about it. The incident at Windsor Castle was over, but the real story was just beginning. James Mitchell could not sleep that night. He kept thinking about what happened with Queen Camilla. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her angry face and felt her hands pushing him. He had never been so confused in his life. The next morning, James got up early and went to work. He hoped that maybe yesterday was just a bad dream. But when he saw the other guards, he knew it was real. Guard Thompson and Guard Peters looked at him with worried faces. "How are you feeling?" Thompson asked. "Not good," James said honestly. "I keep thinking about what happened." "Maybe you should talk to Captain Williams," Peters suggested. Captain Williams was their boss. He was a fair man who had been in charge of the guards for 15 years. James thought about this. He knew he should report what happened, but he was scared. What if nobody believed him? What if he lost his job? "I don't know," James said. "Who's going to believe that the Queen attacked me?" "The truth is the truth," Thompson said. "Captain Williams is a good man. He'll listen to you." At 10 o'clock that morning, James knocked on Captain Williams's office door. His hands were shaking a little. "Come in," Captain Williams called. James walked into the office. Captain Williams was a big man with gray hair and a kind face. He had always been nice to James. "Sit down, Mitchell," Captain Williams said. "You look worried. What's on your mind?" James sat down in the chair across from the captain's desk. He took a deep breath. "Sir, something happened yesterday," James began. "Something with Queen Camilla." Captain Williams put down his pen and looked at James carefully. "What kind of something?" James told Captain Williams everything that happened. He talked about the open door, the argument, and how Queen Camilla had pushed and tried to hit him. Captain Williams listened without saying anything when James finished. His story, Captain Williams was quiet for a long time. He looked very serious. "This is a very serious accusation, Mitchell," Captain Williams finally said. "You're saying that Queen Camilla physically attacked you?" "Yes, sir," James said. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. Do you have any proof? Any witnesses who saw the whole thing? James felt disappointed. Thompson and Peters came at the end, but they didn't see Queen Camilla push me. They only heard the shouting. Captain Williams rubbed his forehead. He looked like he was thinking. Very hard, Mitchell, you've been a good guard for 8 years, he said. I've never had any problems with you. But this is Queen Camilla we're talking about. This could cause big trouble for everyone. I know, sir, James said. But I can't pretend it didn't happen. Captain Williams stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the castle grounds for a few minutes. If you want to make a formal complaint, I have to report it, he said. Once I do that, there's no going back. Are you sure you want to do this? James thought about his job, his family, and his future. Then he thought about what was right and what was wrong. Yes, sir, James said. I want to make a formal complaint. Captain. Williams nodded slowly. Okay, I'll start the paperwork. But Mitchell, you need to understand something. This is going to get very difficult for you. 2 hours later, James signed an official complaint against Queen Camilla. The paper said that she had physically attacked him while he was doing his job. Once James signed it, Captain Williams had to send it to his bosses by the end of the day. The complaint had reached the highest levels of palace security. Sir Robert Blackwood, who was in charge of all royal security, read James's complaint 3 times. He could not believe what he was reading. Sir Robert immediately called an emergency meeting with the other top palace officials. They met in a small room where they could talk privately. Gentlemen, Sir Robert said to the 5 men sitting around the table, we have a serious problem. He read James's complaint out loud. The men listened with shocked faces. When he finished, everyone was quiet. Is this guard reliable? Asked Mr. Charles Hartley, who worked in palace communications. Very reliable, Sir Robert said. 8 years of good service. Never any problems. But this is impossible, said another man. Queen Camilla would never do such a thing. She's always so polite in public. That's what makes this so dangerous, Mr. Hartley said. If this story gets out, it could destroy her reputation. The men talked for 2 hours about what to do. Some thought James was lying, others weren't sure. But everyone agreed that this was very bad for the royal family. We need to handle this very carefully, Sir Robert said. If the newspapers find out about this, it will be a disaster. What if we just ignore it? One man suggested. Maybe the guard will change his mind. We can't ignore it, Sir Robert said. It's an official complaint. We have to investigate. Then we need to control the investigation, Mr. Hartley said. Make sure it doesn't go too far. The next morning, James was called to a meeting with palace lawyers. There were 3 men in expensive suits sitting at a big table. James felt very small and scared. Mr. Mitchell, said the oldest lawyer, we understand you've made some serious accusations against Her Majesty Queen Camilla. Yes, sir, James said. I told the truth about what happened. The truth? The lawyer said. He smiled, but it was not a nice smile. Mr. Mitchell, are you sure you remember everything correctly? Sometimes when people are stressed, they remember. Things wrong. I remember everything perfectly, James said. Queen Camilla attacked me. That's a very serious thing to say, another lawyer said. If you're wrong, you could lose your job. You could even go to jail for lying about the Queen. James felt scared, but he didn't change his story. I'm not lying, he said. The lawyers asked James the same questions over and over again. They tried to confuse him and make him change his story. But James kept telling the truth. After 3 hours, the lawyers let James go. But before he left, the oldest lawyer said something that made James's blood run cold. Mr. Mitchell, you should think very carefully about this complaint. Sometimes it's better to admit you made a mistake. People who cause trouble for the royal family often regret it. James left the meeting feeling worse than before. He realized that these powerful people were trying to scare him into dropping his complaint. But he couldn't do that. What Queen Camilla did was wrong. That evening, James went home to his small apartment. He lived alone since his wife had died 2 years ago. He made himself some tea and sat in his favorite chair. As he sat there, James thought about his life. He had always been proud to work for the royal family. He had always believed they were good people who cared about others. But now he wasn't sure about anything. James picked up his phone and called his brother David, who lived in Scotland. "David, it's James," he said when his brother answered. "James, good to hear from you. How's work at the castle?" James didn't know how to explain what was happening. "David, if something bad happened to you at work, what would you do?" "What kind of bad thing?" David asked. He sounded worried. "Something really bad. Something that could get you in trouble if you reported it." David was quiet for a moment. "James, are you okay? You sound strange." "I'm not okay," James said. "I think I'm in big trouble." "What happened?" James wanted to tell his brother everything, but he was scared. What if the palace found out he was talking to people about what happened? "I can't tell you right now," James said. "But David, what would you do if you had to choose between doing the right thing and keeping your job?" "I'd do the right thing," David said without hesitation. "Jobs come and go, but you have to live with yourself forever." After James hung up the phone, he felt a little better. His brother was right. He had to do what was right, even if it was scary. The next morning, James went to work as usual. But something was different. Other guards looked at him strangely. Some of them wouldn't talk to him. James realized that word about his complaint was spreading. At lunchtime, Guard Thompson sat next to James in the cafeteria. "James, people are talking," Thompson said quietly. "They're saying you accused Queen Camilla of attacking you." "It's true," James said. "I did accuse her because she did attack me." "James, you need to be careful," Thompson said. "Some of the older guards are saying you're lying. They think you're trying to cause trouble." "I'm not trying to cause trouble," James said. "I'm just telling the truth." "I know," Thompson said. "But truth doesn't always matter to powerful people." That afternoon, James was called to Captain Williams's office again. "This time, Captain." Williams looked very uncomfortable. "Mitchell, I've been getting a lot of pressure about your complaint," Captain Williams said. "People very high up want this to go away." "What does that mean?" James asked. "It means they're offering you something," Captain Williams said. "If you withdraw your complaint, they'll give you a promotion and a big raise. You could be in charge of your own security team." James felt angry. They were trying to buy his silence. "And if I don't withdraw my complaint?" James asked. Captain Williams looked sad. "Then they'll probably find a way to fire you. They'll say you're unreliable or that you broke some rule." James sat in the chair feeling like the world was against him. Everyone wanted him to lie and say that Queen Camilla never attacked him, but he couldn't do it. "Captain Williams," James said, "what would you do if you were me?" Captain Williams looked at James for a long time. "Honestly, I don't know, son. I really don't know." That night, James lay in bed staring at the ceiling. James Mitchell decided not to take the money. The next morning, he told Captain Williams that he would not withdraw his complaint. Captain Williams looked worried, but nodded. "I expected that," Captain Williams said. "You're a good man, Mitchell. I hope this works out for you." But James could see in the captain's eyes that he didn't think it would work out well. What James didn't know was that his complaint had started something much bigger than he imagined. Word about the incident had begun to spread quietly through the castle. People were whispering in hallways and talking in secret. Mary Patterson was a maid who had worked at Windsor Castle for 12 years. She was a small woman with gray hair who always did her job quietly. Mary had heard about James's complaint, and it made her think about things she had tried to forget 3 years ago. Mary had been cleaning Queen Camilla's private sitting room. She was being very careful because the Queen had expensive things everywhere. As Mary was dusting a table, she accidentally knocked over a small glass ornament. It fell on the carpet and broke into several pieces. Mary was very upset. She knew the Queen would be angry. She quickly picked up the pieces and tried to think of what to do. That's when Queen Camilla walked into the room. "What was that noise?" Queen Camilla asked. Mary's hands were shaking. "Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I accidentally broke one of your ornaments." Queen Camilla looked at the broken pieces in Mary's hands. Her face became very angry. "You stupid woman!" Queen Camilla shouted. "Do you know how much that cost?" I'm very sorry, Your Majesty, Mary said. She was trying not to cry. It was an accident. Accident? Queen Camilla laughed meanly. You people are all the same, clumsy and careless. Mary had never been spoken to like this before. The other members of the royal family were always polite to the staff. I'll pay for it, Mary said quietly. Pay for it? Queen Camilla moved closer to Mary. With what money? You probably make less in a year than I spend. On shoes, Mary felt very small and ashamed. She just wanted to leave the room. Maybe I should call your supervisor, Queen Camilla said. Maybe you shouldn't be working here anymore? Please, Your Majesty, Mary begged. I need this job. I have 3 children to feed. Queen Camilla smiled, but it was a cruel smile. Then, you better be more careful, hadn't you? And you better not tell anyone about this conversation. After Queen Camilla left, Mary sat on the floor and cried. She had never felt so humiliated in her life. But she was scared to tell anyone what happened because she needed her job. When Mary heard about James's complaint, she remembered that day and many other times when Queen Camilla had been mean to staff members. Mary realized that James was telling the truth. Mary wasn't the only one who remembered bad experiences with Queen Camilla. Tom Bradley was a gardener who had worked at the castle for 15 years. He was a strong man who loved taking care of the beautiful gardens that surrounded Windsor Castle. Last summer, Tom had been planting new roses in the Queen's private garden. He had been working since early morning and the sun was very hot. Tom was focused on his work when he heard someone walking behind him. What are you doing? A voice said sharply. Tom turned around and saw Queen Camilla standing there. She was wearing a white dress and a large hat. Good morning, Your Majesty, Tom said politely. I'm planting the new roses you requested. Those roses are in the wrong place, Queen Camilla said angrily. Tom looked confused. Your Majesty, these are exactly where the head gardener told me to plant them. I don't care what he told you, Queen Camilla said. I'm telling you they're wrong. Tom had been gardening for 25 years. He knew about plants and he knew about gardens. The roses were in the perfect spot to get enough sun and water. Your Majesty, if I move them to a different spot, they might not grow well, Tom said carefully. Queen Camilla's face became red with anger. Are you arguing with me? No, Your Majesty, Tom said quickly. I just wanted to make sure the roses are healthy. I don't care about your opinion, Queen Camilla said loudly. You will move those roses where I tell you to move them. But Your Majesty, Tom started to say, don't but me. Queen Camilla screamed. You're just a gardener. You don't know anything. Tom felt very hurt. He had won awards for his gardening work. He had made the castle gardens beautiful for many years. Move those roses right now, Queen Camilla ordered. And if you ever question me again, you'll be looking for a new job. Tom spent the rest of that hot day moving the roses to a shady spot where he knew they wouldn't grow well. Just as he predicted, most of the roses died within a month. But Tom never told anyone why. When Tom heard about James's complaint, he realized that other people had also been treated badly by Queen Camilla. Sarah Jenkins was a young woman who worked in the castle kitchen. She was only 22 years old and had been working there for 2 years. Sarah loved cooking and was very good at her job. One day, Sarah was asked to bring tea to Queen Camilla's private room. This was a special job that was usually given to more experienced staff. Sarah was excited and nervous. Sarah prepared the tea service very carefully. She used the finest china and made sure everything looked perfect. She carried the heavy tray up the stairs to Queen Camilla's room. When Sarah knocked on the door, Queen Camilla told her to come in. Sarah walked carefully into the room and set the tray on a small table. Your tea, Your Majesty, Sarah said with a smile. Queen Camilla looked at the tray and frowned. This is wrong, she said. Sarah felt confused. I'm sorry, Your Majesty. What's wrong with it? The cups are facing the wrong direction, Queen Camilla said angrily. Sarah looked at the tray. The cups looked fine to her. She had set them up exactly like she had been taught. I can fix that right away, Sarah said. She reached for one of the cups. Don't touch it, Queen Camilla shouted. You've already ruined it. Sarah pulled her hand back quickly. She didn't understand what she had done wrong. You young people are all the same, Queen Camilla said meanly. You don't care about doing things properly. I do care, Your Majesty, Sarah said. I tried very hard to make it perfect. Perfect? Queen Camilla laughed. This is far from perfect. Take this mess away and send someone who knows what they're doing. Sarah felt like she might cry, but she held back her tears. She picked up the tray with shaking hands. And next time, Queen Camilla added, maybe you should stay in the kitchen where you belong. Sarah left the room feeling terrible about herself. She had worked so hard to do a good job, but Queen Camilla made her feel stupid and worthless. Later, Sarah found out from other staff members that the tea service had been set up correctly. Queen Camilla had been mean to her for no reason. As news of James's complaint spread through the castle, more and more staff members began to remember their own bad experiences with Queen Camilla. People who had been too scared to speak before started talking to each other. They met in quiet places where they wouldn't be overheard. In the staff cafeteria during breaks, in supply closets, and in the gardens during their lunch hours, they shared their stories. She called me an idiot for bringing her the wrong newspaper, said one maid. She threw a book at me when I accidentally turned on the wrong light, said another staff member. She told me I was too ugly to work in the main rooms, said a young cleaner. The stories were all similar. Queen Camilla had been cruel and mean to many different people. She had made them feel small and worthless, and she had always threatened their jobs if they told anyone. One evening, Mary Patterson, Tom Bradley, and Sarah Jenkins met in Tom's gardening shed. They had become friends through their shared experiences. We can't let James fight this alone, Mary said. We all know he's telling the truth. But what can we do? Sarah asked. Who's going to believe us? Maybe if we all speak together, people will listen, Tom suggested. It's scary, Mary said. What if we lose our jobs? What if we don't speak up and nothing changes? Tom asked. Queen Camilla will keep treating people badly. The three friends talked for a long time that night. They decided that they had to support James Mitchell. They had to tell their own stories. The next day, Mary Patterson went to Captain Williams's office. She was very nervous, but she knocked on the door. Come in, Captain Williams called. Mary walked into the office. Captain Williams looked surprised to see her. Mrs. Patterson, what can I do for you? Captain Williams, Mary said quietly. I want to support James Mitchell's complaint against Queen Camilla. Captain Williams looked shocked. What do you mean? I mean that Queen Camilla has been cruel. To me too, Mary said, and to other people. James is telling the truth. Captain Williams sat back in his chair. He looked very tired. Mrs. Patterson, are you sure you want to do this? Yes, sir, Mary said, I'm sure. Within the next 2 days, Tom Bradley and Sarah Jenkins also came to Captain Williams's office. They each told their stories about Queen Camilla's bad behavior. Soon, other staff members began coming forward too. A butler who had been yelled at for walking too loudly. A driver who had been called stupid for taking a route Queen Camilla didn't like. A secretary who had been made to redo work 5 times for no good reason. Captain Williams couldn't believe what he was hearing. In 3 days, 8 different staff members had come to him with complaints about Queen Camilla. This is unbelievable, Captain Williams said to himself as he looked at all the complaint forms on his desk. After 8 other staff members came forward with their own stories, everything changed for James Mitchell. He was no longer fighting alone. But this also meant that more pressure was being put on everyone involved. The palace lawyers called James to another meeting. This time there were 5 lawyers in the room instead of 3. They all looked very serious and angry. Mr. Mitchell, said the head lawyer, a thin man with cold eyes, we understand that you've been talking to other staff members. I haven't been talking to anyone, James said truthfully. Other people came forward on their own. Don't lie to us, another lawyer said. Suddenly, 8 people have complaints about Queen Camilla? That's not a coincidence. James felt frustrated. Maybe it's not a coincidence because Queen Camilla really has been treating people badly. The lawyers looked at each other. James could see they were worried about all the new complaints. "Mr. Mitchell, we're going to give you one last chance." The head lawyer said, "Take back your complaint and convince these other people to take back theirs. If you do this, we'll give you £50,000 and a job anywhere you want." £50,000 was more money than James made in 2 years. It was enough to change his whole life. But James thought about Queen Camilla pushing him and screaming at him. He thought about Mary crying after Queen Camilla called her stupid. He thought about all the other people who had been hurt. "No," James said firmly. "I won't take back my complaint." The lawyers were quiet for a moment. Then the head lawyer smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. "Then you're making a big mistake, Mr. Mitchell, a very big mistake." 2 days later, James got a call from a newspaper reporter named Rebecca Collins. Rebecca worked for the London Daily, one of the biggest newspapers in England. "Mr. Mitchell, my name is Rebecca Collins. I'm a reporter, and I've heard that you have a complaint against Queen Camilla. Would you like to tell your story?" James was scared to talk to a reporter. He knew that once his story was in the newspaper, there would be no going back. "I don't know," James said. "I'm not supposed to talk to reporters. Mr. Mitchell, the public has a right to know if members of the royal family are treating people badly," Rebecca said. "Your story could help other people." That night, James couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Rebecca had said. Maybe if people knew the truth, Queen Camilla would have to change her behavior. The next morning, James called Rebecca back. "I'll tell you my story," James said. "But I want to tell you everything, not just part of it." Rebecca was very excited. "Of course. When can we meet?" They met that afternoon in a small cafe far from Windsor Castle. Rebecca brought a recording device and a notebook. James was very nervous. "Take your time," Rebecca said kindly. "Start from the beginning." James began by telling Rebecca about the morning when everything happened. He described finding the open door, Queen Camilla's angry reaction, and how she had pushed and tried to hit him. But then James surprised Rebecca by telling her much more than she expected. "That wasn't the first time I saw Queen Camilla act badly," James said. "I've been working there for 8 years, and I've seen her be mean to people many times." "Can you give me some examples?" Rebecca asked. James told Rebecca about things he had witnessed over the years. He had seen Queen Camilla scream at maids for small mistakes. He had watched her make people feel terrible about themselves. He had heard her say cruel things about staff members behind their backs. "One time I saw her make a young maid cry because the girl brought her tea that was too hot," James said. Queen Camilla threw the cup on the floor and told the girl she was worthless. "Did you report any of these incidents?" Rebecca asked. "No," James said sadly. "I was told that Queen Camilla was just having bad days. Everyone said we should ignore it and do our jobs." James told Rebecca about how staff members were afraid to complain about Queen Camilla. Anyone who caused trouble would lose their job. People with families to feed couldn't risk speaking up. "It's like a system of fear," James explained. "Everyone knows what she's like, but nobody talks about it because they're scared." Rebecca was shocked by what she was hearing. This was much bigger than just one incident. This was about years of bad treatment. "James, do you have any proof of these things?" Rebecca asked. "I have dates and times written down," James said. "I started keeping notes about incidents I witnessed because I was worried about what might happen." James showed Rebecca a small notebook he had been carrying. In it, he had written down details about many incidents involving Queen Camilla and staff members. "Why did you start keeping these notes?" Rebecca asked. "Because I could see that Queen Camilla was getting worse," James said. "She used to hide her bad behavior better. But lately she's been more open about it. I was worried that someday something really bad would happen." Rebecca looked through James's notebook. There were dozens of entries describing Queen Camilla's cruel behavior toward staff members. "James, this is incredible," Rebecca said. "You've documented a pattern of abuse going back 3 years." "I never planned to use these notes," James said. "I just wanted to remember things correctly in case I ever needed to." Rebecca asked James many more questions about his experiences at Windsor Castle. James told her about the fear that staff members lived with every day. He explained how Queen Camilla would be sweet and charming in public, then turn mean and cruel when cameras weren't around. She's like two different people, James said. In front of important visitors or cameras, she's perfect. But when it's just staff members around, she shows her real personality. James also told Rebecca about how the palace tried to cover up Queen Camilla's bad behavior. When staff members complained, they were told to keep quiet or they would lose their jobs. Some people were even moved to different jobs to keep them away from Queen Camilla. There's a whole system designed to protect Queen Camilla and hide what she's really like, James explained. What about the other staff members who have come forward? Rebecca asked. They're brave people, James said. Mary Patterson, Tom Bradley, Sarah Jenkins, and the others. They could lose everything by speaking up, but they're doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. James told Rebecca that he was worried about retaliation against the staff members who had supported him. The palace is very powerful, James said. They can make life very difficult for people who cause trouble. As the interview continued, Rebecca realized that this was one of the biggest royal scandals in years. She was also impressed by James's honesty and courage. James, aren't you afraid of what might happen to you? Rebecca asked. Of course I'm afraid, James said. But I'm more afraid of what will happen if nobody speaks up. Queen Camilla will keep treating people badly and it will get worse. James explained that he had received threats from palace lawyers. They had offered him money to stay quiet, and when he refused, they had threatened to ruin his career. They told me that no one would ever hire me again if I didn't withdraw my complaint, James said. They said they would make sure I could never work in security anywhere. Are you willing to repeat these allegations publicly? Rebecca asked. James was quiet for a long time. He knew that once his story was published, his life would never be the same. But he thought about all the staff members who had been hurt by Queen Camilla over the years. Yes, James said finally. I'm willing to go public with this. Rebecca finished the interview after 3 hours. She had enough information for several newspaper articles. James, I want you to know that what you're doing is very brave, Rebecca said. This story could change everything. As Rebecca left the cafe, she was already planning how to write the biggest royal expose of her career. She had documentation, multiple witnesses, and a credible source who was willing to go on the record. Meanwhile, James went home knowing that in a few days his story would be front-page news all over the world. He was scared, but he also felt relieved. After years of watching Queen Camilla hurt people, he was finally doing something to stop it. That night, James called his brother David in Scotland. David, you're going to see my name in the newspapers soon. James said. What? Why? David asked. Remember when I asked you about doing the right thing even if it's hard? James said, yes. Well, I did the right thing. And now everyone's going to know about it. James told his brother about the complaint against Queen Camilla and the newspaper interview. James, are you sure about this? David asked. These people are very powerful. I'm sure, James said. I can't keep quiet about this anymore. Then I'm proud of you, David said. And I'll support you no matter what happens. 2 days later, Rebecca Collins's article appeared on the front page of the London Daily. The headline read, Royal Guard reveals Queen Camilla's years of cruelty to castle staff. Within hours, the story was being discussed on television news. Shows around the world. James Mitchell's name became known to millions of people. The article included quotes from James's interview and details from his notebook. It also mentioned the other staff members who had come forward with similar complaints. As James watched the news coverage from his apartment, he knew that everything had changed. There was no going back now. The truth about Queen Camilla was finally out in the open, but James also knew that the real fight was just beginning. When Rebecca Collins's article was published, it felt like a bomb had exploded inside Buckingham Palace. King Charles was having breakfast when his private secretary rushed into the room with the newspaper. Your Majesty, we have a serious problem, the secretary said, placing the newspaper on the table. King Charles read the headline and felt his heart sink. He had been king for less than 2 years, and now he was facing the biggest crisis of his reign. Is this true? King Charles asked quietly. "We're investigating, Your Majesty," the secretary replied. "But 8 staff members have made formal complaints." King Charles put down his coffee cup. His hands were shaking slightly. "Where is Camilla?" "Queen." "Camilla is in her private rooms, Your Majesty. She hasn't come out since the article was published." Within an hour, the palace was in complete chaos. Phone calls were coming in from newspapers around the world. Television news trucks were gathering outside the palace gates. Social media was exploding with discussions about the story. Sir Robert Blackwood, the head of royal security, called an emergency meeting with the king's most trusted advisors. They met in a secure room where they could speak freely. "Gentlemen, this is a disaster," Sir Robert said. "The story is spreading faster than we can control it." "How bad is it?" asked Lord Hampton, the king's closest advisor. "Very bad," replied Mr. Charles Hartley from Palace Communications. "The article has been shared millions of times online. Every major news outlet is covering it." "What about the other staff members who made complaints?" Lord Hampton asked. 3 more people came forward this morning," Sir Robert said grimly. "The story is encouraging others to speak up." The men sat in worried silence. None of them had dealt with anything this serious before. "We need to talk to His Majesty," Lord Hampton said. "He needs to know how bad this is." They found King Charles in his study, staring out the window at the crowds of reporters gathering outside. "Your Majesty," Lord Hampton said carefully, "we need to discuss our response to this situation." King Charles turned around. He looked older than he had just a few hours ago. "What are you suggesting?" the king asked. "We have several options," Mr. Hartley said. "We can deny everything and say the staff members are lying. We can say Queen Camilla was having personal problems. Or we can admit there were some issues and say they've been resolved." "What do you recommend?" King Charles asked. "Honestly, Your Majesty, none of these options are good," Mr. Hartley admitted. "The Guard has documentation going back 3 years. Other staff members are supporting his story. It's going to be very hard to deny." King Charles sat down heavily in his chair. "I need to speak with Camilla." "Your Majesty, perhaps that's not the best idea right now," Lord Hampton suggested. "Queen Camilla is very upset. Maybe we should handle the public response first." "No," King Charles said firmly. "I need to hear her side of this story." King Charles walked through the palace corridors to Queen Camilla's private rooms. He could see staff members whispering and looking worried. Everyone knew that something terrible was happening. When King Charles knocked on Camilla's door, there was no answer. At first, "Camilla, it's Charles. I need to speak with you." After a moment, Queen Camilla opened the door. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked terrible. "Charles, this is all lies," she said immediately. "These people are making up stories about me." King Charles came into the room and sat down. "Camilla, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you push that guard?" Queen Camilla was quiet for a long time. "He was being disrespectful," she finally said. "That's not what I asked," King Charles said. "Did you push him?" "He wouldn't listen to me," Queen Camilla said. "He kept arguing with me about some stupid door." King Charles felt sick. "So you did push him?" "I barely touched him," Queen Camilla said angrily. "He's making it sound much worse than it was. What about the other incidents?" King Charles asked. "The staff members are saying you've been cruel to them for years. They're all lying," Queen Camilla shouted. "They're jealous of me. They want to destroy me." But King Charles could see in his wife's eyes that she wasn't telling the whole truth. He had been married to her for many years. He knew when she was hiding something. "Camilla, please," King Charles said sadly. "Just tell me what really happened." "Queen." Camilla started crying again. "Sometimes I get frustrated," she admitted. "These people don't understand how hard my job is. They don't respect me like they respected Diana." King Charles felt his heart break a little. He realized that his wife had been taking out her insecurities and anger on innocent people. "How often has this happened?" King Charles asked. "I don't know," Queen Camilla said quietly. "Sometimes I lose my temper, but I never meant to hurt anyone." King Charles stood up. He felt like he didn't know his wife anymore. "Charles, you have to help me," Queen Camilla begged. "You can't let them destroy me." "I'll do what I can," King Charles said. "But Camilla, if these stories are true, there have to be consequences." Meanwhile, outside the palace, the media circus was growing bigger by the hour. Reporters from around the world were arriving in London. The story was being covered on every news channel. James Mitchell found himself at the center of a storm he never expected. His phone rang constantly with calls from reporters wanting interviews. Camera crews were parked outside his apartment building. "I can't leave my house," James told his brother David on the phone. "There are reporters everywhere. Are you okay?" David asked. "I'm scared," James admitted. "I never thought it would get this big." "You did the right thing," David said. "Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." That afternoon, the palace released their first official statement. It was carefully written by Mr. Hartley and approved by King Charles. Buckingham Palace is aware of allegations made by former staff members. We take these concerns seriously and are conducting a thorough investigation. Queen Camilla is committed to maintaining the highest standards in all her interactions. But the statement didn't help. If anything, it made things worse because it didn't deny the allegations. Within hours, more palace staff members came forward. A footman who had been yelled at for serving dinner 2 minutes late. A cleaner who had been called names for missing a spot on a mirror. A driver who had been screamed at for taking a route Queen Camilla didn't like. By the end of the day, 15 different staff members had made formal complaints against Queen Camilla. "This is unprecedented," Sir Robert told King Charles. "I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of royal service." That evening, King Charles held another emergency meeting with his advisors. Everyone looked exhausted and worried. "The situation is getting worse," Mr. Hartley reported. "More staff members are coming forward every hour. The international media is calling this the biggest royal scandal since Princess Diana's death." "What about public opinion?" King Charles asked. "Not good, Your Majesty," Mr. Hartley said. "Early polls show that most people believe the staff members' stories. Queen Camilla's approval rating has dropped to the lowest level ever recorded for a royal family member." Lord Hampton leaned forward. "Your Majesty, we need to consider that Queen Camilla might need to step back from her royal duties." "Absolutely not," King Charles said quickly. "She's my wife." "I won't abandon her." "Your Majesty, with respect, this isn't about your marriage," Sir Robert said. "This is about the reputation of the monarchy. If we don't handle this correctly, it could damage the royal family for generations." King Charles felt torn between loyalty to his wife and his duty to the crown. It was the hardest decision he had ever faced. "What are my options?" King Charles asked. "Queen Camilla could apologize publicly and agree to undergo counseling," Mr. Hartley suggested. "She could also step back from public duties for a while." "Or," King Charles asked, "or we could announce that she's having health problems and needs to rest," Lord Hampton said. "That would give us time to figure out a long-term solution." "I won't lie about my wife's health," King Charles said firmly. As the meeting continued, they received more bad news. Several members of Parliament were calling for an investigation into the royal household's treatment of staff. Human rights organizations were demanding reforms. Even some members of the royal family were privately expressing concern. "Your Majesty," Sir Robert said carefully, "I've received word that Prince William and Princess Catherine are very concerned about this situation. They're worried about how it might affect their children's future." King Charles felt the weight of the entire monarchy on his shoulders. His own family was worried about the scandal his wife had created. Late that night, King Charles sat alone in his study. He was thinking about his mother, Queen Elizabeth, and how she had always put duty before personal feelings. He wondered what she would have done in this situation. There was a knock on his door. Queen Camilla came in, looking even worse than before. "Charles, I've been thinking," she said quietly. "Maybe I should step back from public duties for a while." King Charles looked at his wife. For the first time since the crisis began, she seemed to understand how serious the situation was. Are you sure? King Charles asked. I don't want to hurt the monarchy, Queen Camilla said. Or you, maybe if I disappear for a while, this will all blow over. But King Charles knew it wouldn't blow over. James Mitchell's courage in speaking up had started something that couldn't be stopped. The next morning, James Mitchell woke up to find his story on the front page of newspapers around the world. He couldn't believe how quickly everything had spread. His neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, knocked on his door early in the morning. James, dear, are you all right? She asked with concern. There are television cameras everywhere. James looked out his window and saw that the crowd of reporters had grown even bigger overnight. There were news trucks from different countries parked on his street. I'm okay, Mrs. Henderson, James said. But I think I'll be staying inside today. What James didn't know was that people all over the world were talking about his story. In coffee shops, offices, and homes, everyone was discussing Queen Camilla and how she had treated palace staff. In Manchester, England, Sarah Williams was having breakfast with her husband when she saw the news on television. I can't believe this, Sarah said. Queen Camilla seemed so nice in public. It just shows you never really know what people are like behind closed doors. Her husband replied. Sarah thought about her own job at a hotel where she worked as a cleaner. If my boss treated me like that, I would quit immediately. These poor people needed their jobs, so they had to put up with it. Similar conversations were happening everywhere. People were shocked to learn that Queen Camilla, who always smiled and waved at public events, was allegedly cruel to the people who worked for her. On social media, the story exploded like nothing anyone had seen before. The hashtag justice for royal staff was being used millions of times. People were sharing the story and adding their own comments. This is terrible. Those poor workers, wrote one person on Twitter. I always suspected she was fake. Now we know the truth, wrote another. James Mitchell is a hero for speaking up, wrote a third person, but not everyone supported James. Some people defended Queen Camilla and said the staff members were lying. These people are just trying to get money and attention, wrote one supporter. Queen Camilla has done so much good work for charity. This is all made up, wrote another. However, the supporting voices were much quieter than the voices demanding justice for the royal staff. Television news shows around the world were covering the story as their main headline. In America, CNN was showing pictures of James Mitchell and talking about his brave decision to speak up. In Australia, the morning news shows were discussing how this would affect the British royal family. This is the biggest royal scandal since Princess Diana's death, said royal expert Victoria Murphy on BBC News. The public is shocked to learn about Queen Camilla's alleged behavior. By noon on the second day, opinion polls were showing dramatic changes in how people felt about Queen Camilla. Before James's story came out, about 60% of British people had a positive opinion of Queen Camilla. Now that number had dropped to just 25%. More importantly, 78% of people said they believed James Mitchell and the other staff members were telling the truth. These numbers are devastating for Queen Camilla, explained pollster Dr. James Peterson on television. Once public opinion turns this strongly against a royal family member, it's very difficult to recover. Meanwhile, more disturbing stories about Queen Camilla were emerging. Former staff members who no longer worked at the palace were now feeling brave enough to speak up. Margaret Foster had worked as a maid at Buckingham Palace 5 years ago. When she saw James's story on the news, she decided to call the London daily newspaper. I want to tell my story too, Margaret told Rebecca Collins over the phone. Margaret told Rebecca about a time when Queen Camilla had humiliated her in front of other staff members. Margaret had been cleaning Queen Camilla's bathroom when she accidentally used the wrong cleaning product. The smell was a bit strong, but it wasn't dangerous. When Queen Camilla came into the bathroom and smelled the cleaning product, she became furious. What is that terrible smell? Queen Camilla had shouted, I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I used a different cleaning product by mistake, Margaret had explained. By mistake? Queen Camilla had screamed. Are you trying to poison me? No, Your Majesty. It was just an accident, Margaret had said. But Queen Camilla wouldn't listen. She called for the head of housekeeping and made Margaret stand there while she described what a stupid, careless person Margaret was. She made me feel like I was the worst person in the world, Margaret told Rebecca. I went home and cried for hours. Margaret's story was published the next day, along with stories from 3 other former palace workers. Each story showed the same pattern of Queen Camilla being cruel and unreasonable to people who were just trying to do their jobs. The public reaction to these new stories was even stronger than before. People were angry that Queen Camilla had been hurting innocent workers for years. In London, a group of people decided to organize a protest outside Buckingham Palace. The protest was led by a woman named Emma Thompson, not the famous actress, but a social worker with the same name. We're here to support all the brave workers who spoke up against abuse. Emma announced to the crowd of about 200 people who had gathered. The protesters carried signs that said things like "Respect Royal Workers" and "Justice for James Mitchell." They stood peacefully outside the palace gates, but their message was clear. The protest was covered by television news, and videos of it spread quickly on social media. By the next day, similar protests were being organized in other cities across Britain. In Birmingham, Manchester, and Edinburgh, people gathered to show support for the royal staff members. The protests were peaceful, but they sent a strong message that the public would not accept abuse of workers, even by royalty. This isn't about being anti-monarchy, explained protest organizer David Chun in Manchester. This is about basic human decency. Nobody should be treated the way these workers were treated. The protests made the palace very nervous. They showed that this wasn't just a media story that would go away. Real people were angry and demanding change. Inside the palace, King Charles was receiving updates about the public reaction. The news got worse every hour. "Your Majesty, we're seeing protests in 12 different cities now," reported Mr. Hartley. "The public anger is growing, not shrinking." "What about international reaction?" King Charles asked. "Not good, sir. The story is front-page news in America, Canada, Australia, and across Europe. Foreign governments are asking us about our treatment of workers." King Charles felt sick. He had spent his whole life preparing to be king, and now his reign was being destroyed by his wife's behavior. Even worse news came from within the royal family itself. Prince William and Princess Catherine released a carefully worded statement that seemed to distance themselves from Queen Camilla. "We believe all workers deserve to be treated with dignity and respect," their statement said. "We are committed to ensuring the highest standards in all royal households." While the statement didn't directly criticize Queen Camilla, everyone understood what it meant. Even King Charles's own son was not supporting his stepmother. The public noticed this immediately. Even Prince William doesn't support Queen Camilla, people said on social media. Young people especially were angry about the story. On TikTok and Instagram, millions of young people were sharing videos criticizing Queen Camilla and supporting James Mitchell. "This is exactly why young people don't respect the royal family anymore," said one popular TikTok creator. "They think they're better than everyone else." A poll of people aged 18 to 25 showed that 89% believed Queen Camilla should face consequences for her actions. Many young people said the scandal made them question whether Britain should even have a royal family. "Why should we pay taxes to support people who abuse their workers?" asked university student Lisa Chun in an interview with BBC News. The economic impact was also becoming clear. Tourism companies reported that bookings for royal-themed tours were being cancelled. The gift shop at Buckingham Palace had to remove items featuring Queen Camilla because people refused to buy them. "This is costing the country millions of pounds," said economist Dr. Sarah Ahmed. "The royal family brings in tourist money, but this scandal is driving people away." Even some members of parliament, who usually stayed out of royal family issues, began speaking up. "The treatment of workers described in these allegations is completely unacceptable," said Labour MP Janet Harrison. "No one should be above the law when it comes to workplace abuse." Conservative MP Robert Davies, who normally supported the royal family, said, "These are very serious allegations that need to be properly investigated." As the week went on, the situation continued to get worse for Queen Camilla. More former workers came forward with stories. The protests grew larger. Public opinion polls showed that most people wanted her to face real consequences. James Mitchell watched all of this from his apartment, feeling overwhelmed by what his decision to speak up had started. "I never thought it would get this big," he told his brother David on the phone. "You started something important," David replied. "People needed to know the truth." "But what happens now?" James asked. "I don't know," David said honestly. "But I know you did the right thing." By the end of the week, it was clear that public opinion had completely turned against Queen Camilla. The British people, who had slowly accepted her as their queen now, saw her as someone who had abused her power and hurt innocent people. As the protests continued and more stories came out about Queen Camilla's behavior, something even more shocking was about to be revealed. James Mitchell's brave decision to speak up had started an investigation that was uncovering secrets. The palace had worked very hard to hide. Rebecca Collins, the reporter who first interviewed James, received a phone call that would change everything. The caller was a woman who spoke quietly and nervously. "I used to work in the Palace Human Resources Department," the woman said. "I have documents you need to see." The woman's name was Patricia Hughes, and she had worked at Buckingham Palace for 12 years before leaving 2 years ago. Patricia had kept copies of certain documents because she was worried about what she had seen. "I couldn't sleep after reading about James Mitchell," Patricia told Rebecca when they met secretly in a small restaurant outside London. "I know the truth about how the palace handled complaints about Queen Camilla." Patricia opened a briefcase and pulled out a folder filled with papers. "These are copies of complaint forms that staff members filed against Queen Camilla over the past 5 years," Patricia explained. "There were many more complaints than the public knows about." Rebecca looked through the documents with growing shock. There were complaint forms from 23 different staff members, dating back 5 years. Each form described incidents where Queen Camilla had been cruel, abusive, or inappropriate toward workers. "What happened to these complaints?" Rebecca asked. "They were buried," Patricia said sadly. "My supervisor told me to file them away and never mention them again." Patricia explained how the system worked. When a staff member complained about Queen Camilla, the complaint would be taken seriously at first. But then someone from higher up would intervene. "Usually within a day or two I would get a call telling me to lose the complaint," Patricia said. "Sometimes the person who made the complaint would suddenly be transferred to a different job. Other times they would just quit." Rebecca could hardly believe what she was hearing. "You're saying there was an organized cover-up?" "Yes," Patricia said firmly. "The palace knew exactly what Queen Camilla was like, but they worked very hard to keep it secret." Patricia showed Rebecca another set of documents that were even more disturbing. These were what she called silencing agreements, legal documents that staff members were forced to sign. If someone complained about Queen Camilla and the complaint couldn't be buried, they would be asked to sign one of these. Patricia explained. The agreements were several pages long and written in complicated legal language, but the basic idea was simple. The staff member would receive money, usually between £5,000 and £20,000, in exchange for promising never to talk about their experiences with Queen Camilla. "This is incredible," Rebecca said. "How many people signed these agreements?" "At least 15 that I know of," Patricia replied. "Maybe more." Patricia also had emails that showed how the cover-up worked. There were messages between palace officials discussing how to handle the Camilla situation and protect Her Majesty's reputation. One email from Sir Robert Blackwood to another official said, "We need to be more careful about which staff members have access to Queen Camilla. Perhaps we should only use people who have been here for many years and understand the importance of discretion." Another email discussed moving a maid to a different job after she complained about Queen Camilla. "Sarah Jenkins is causing problems. Let's transfer her to the kitchen where she won't interact with Her Majesty." Rebecca realized this was why Sarah Jenkins had ended up working in the kitchen instead of as a maid. She had been punished for complaining. About Queen Camilla's behavior. Why are you showing me this now? Rebecca asked Patricia. Because it's not right, Patricia said. I watched good people get hurt and silenced for years. When I saw James Mitchell's story, I knew I had to do something. Patricia explained that she had left her job at the palace because she couldn't stand being part of the cover-up anymore. I was told to destroy certain documents, but I kept copies because I knew someday the truth would need to come out. She said Rebecca's story about the cover-up was published 3 days later. The headline read, Palace Documents Reveal Years of Cover-Up About Queen Camilla's Abuse. The article included copies of some of the complaint forms and emails that Patricia had provided. It showed clearly that the palace had known about Queen Camilla's behavior for years and had worked systematically to hide it. The public reaction was explosive. People weren't just angry about Queen Camilla's behavior anymore. They were furious. If the palace had covered it up, this is corruption at the highest level, said MP Janet Harrison. The palace used taxpayer money to silence victims of abuse. The revelation also encouraged more people to come forward. Now that they knew about the silencing agreements, some people who had signed them decided to break their silence. Michael Roberts had been a butler at the palace 3 years ago. He had signed a silencing agreement after Queen Camilla had screamed at him and thrown a vase at his head during a dinner party preparation. I needed the money they offered, Michael told Rebecca in an interview. I have 2 children and my wife was sick. But keeping quiet about what happened has haunted me ever since. Michael's story was particularly shocking because the incident had happened while foreign diplomats were visiting the palace. Queen Camilla had lost her temper when Michael placed a fork in the wrong position at a dinner setting. She completely lost control, Michael said. She called me an idiot and threw a crystal vase at me. It barely missed my head and shattered against the wall. The most damaging revelation came when Patricia Hughes provided Rebecca with a secret recording she had made 2 years ago. I started recording meetings because I was worried about what I was being asked to do. Patricia explained the recording was of a meeting between Sir Robert Blackwood and other palace officials. In it, they discussed Queen Camilla's behavior and how to protect her image. We can't keep covering for her forever, one voice said on the recording. We don't have a choice, Sir Robert's voice replied. If this gets out, it could bring down the monarchy. What about the staff members she's hurting? Another voice asked. They're expendable, Sir Robert said coldly. The institution is more important than individual workers. When this recording was played on television news shows, the public was outraged. The idea that palace officials saw staff members as expendable while protecting Queen Camilla made people extremely angry. King Charles was devastated when he heard the recording. He had trusted Sir Robert Blackwood for years, not knowing that he was covering up his wife's behavior. How could you keep this from me? King Charles asked Sir Robert in an emergency meeting. Your Majesty, we thought it was better that you didn't know, Sir Robert replied. We wanted to protect you and the institution. Protect me? King Charles said angrily. By letting my wife hurt innocent people and then covering it up? The investigation was also revealing how the cover-up had affected the royal family's finances. The palace had spent over £300,000 in taxpayer money on silencing agreements, legal fees, and other costs related to hiding Queen Camilla's behavior. The British people paid for this cover-up, said budget expert Dr. Amanda Foster. Their tax money was used to silence victims of abuse. 3 weeks after James Mitchell's story first appeared in the newspapers, the independent investigation commissioned by King Charles released its findings. The report was 400 pages long and contained details that shocked even those who thought they knew how bad the situation was. The investigation, led by former judge Lady Elizabeth Hartwell, had interviewed over 50 current and former palace staff members. The report confirmed that Queen Camilla had engaged in a pattern of abuse that had lasted for over 6 years. The evidence shows systematic mistreatment of staff members that would be considered criminal in any other workplace. Lady Hartwell announced at a press conference, the report documented 127 separate incidents of abuse by Queen Camilla. These ranged from verbal humiliation to physical assault. The investigation also confirmed that palace officials had deliberately covered up these incidents to protect Queen Camilla's public image. The cover-up was as serious as the original abuse, Lady Hartwell said. Senior palace officials chose to protect an abuser rather than innocent victims. The report recommended that Queen Camilla face criminal charges for assault and that several palace officials be fired for their role in the cover-up. On the morning the report was released, King Charles called an emergency meeting with Queen Camilla. They met in his private study, where no one else could hear their conversation. "Camilla, you've read the report," King Charles said sadly. "There's no way to deny this anymore." Queen Camilla sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, she spoke. Quietly, "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. "I just got so frustrated sometimes." "Frustrated?" King Charles said with disbelief. "You hit a 17-year-old boy. You locked someone in a closet. You made people's lives miserable for years." "I know," Queen Camilla said, starting to cry. "I know I did terrible things." King Charles felt his heart breaking. He still loved his wife, but he couldn't ignore what she had done to innocent people. "The investigators are recommending criminal charges," King Charles said. "The police want to interview you." Queen Camilla looked terrified. "What does that mean?" "It means you could go to jail," King Charles said simply. "That afternoon, Queen." Camilla's lawyers met with police investigators. The lawyers tried to argue that Queen Camilla should be treated differently because of her position, but the investigators refused. "No one is above the law," said Detective Inspector Sarah Wilson, who was leading the criminal investigation. "If there's evidence of assault, we will prosecute regardless of who the person is." 2 days later, Queen Camilla was formally charged with assault against James Mitchell and 2 other staff members. She was also charged with harassment and creating a hostile work environment, the sight of Queen Camilla being escorted into a police station by detectives was broadcast around the world. It was the first time in modern history that a member of the British royal family had faced criminal charges. "This is a historic moment," said constitutional expert Professor David Richards. "It shows that even royalty must follow the law." King Charles was forced to make the most difficult decision of his life. He announced that Queen Camilla would immediately step down from all royal duties and that their marriage was under review. "The Queen Consort will no longer represent the crown in any capacity," King Charles said in a televised address to the nation. "The royal family deeply apologizes to all staff members who were mistreated." The public reaction to King Charles's announcement was mixed. Some people praised him for taking action, while others criticized him for not acting sooner. "He should have known what his wife was doing," said protest organizer Emma Thompson. "How can we trust him to lead the country if he couldn't control his own household?" James Mitchell watched King Charles's speech from his apartment. He felt sad for the king, but he also felt relief that justice was finally being done. "Do you regret speaking up?" his brother David asked during a phone call. "No," James said firmly. "Too many people were hurt for too long. Someone had to stop it." James had been offered his job back at the palace, but he declined. Instead, he accepted a position with a security company that specialized in protecting workers' rights. "I want to help make sure this never happens to anyone else," James explained. The other staff members who had come forward were also offered their jobs back, but most chose not to return. Mary Patterson, Tom Bradley, and Sarah Jenkins all found new jobs, where they felt respected and valued. "I could never go back there," Mary said. "Too many bad memories." Sir Robert Blackwood and 3 other senior palace officials were fired for their role in the cover-up. They also faced criminal charges for misuse of public funds and obstruction of justice. "The people who enabled this abuse are just as guilty as Queen Camilla," said MP Janet Harrison. The Parliament investigation revealed that over £500,000 of taxpayer money had been used to cover up Queen Camilla's behavior. This money had to be repaid to the government. Queen Camilla's trial began 6 months later. The evidence against her was overwhelming. James Mitchell testified about the day she attacked him. Other staff members described years of abuse. The secret recordings and documents provided by Patricia Hughes showed the extent of the cover-up. Queen Camilla's lawyers tried to argue that she had been under tremendous stress and that her behavior was out of character, but the evidence showed that the abuse had been going on for years and had gotten worse over time. This was not someone having a bad day, prosecutor Helena Shaw told the jury. This was a pattern of deliberate cruelty toward vulnerable workers. The trial lasted 3 weeks and was covered by media around the world. Every day, more disturbing details came out about how Queen Camilla had treated people. The jury took only 4 hours to find Queen Camilla guilty on all charges. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, though she would likely serve only 1 year with good behavior. The sight of Queen Camilla being led away in handcuffs was broadcast live around the world. It was the end of her royal career and the beginning of a new chapter for the British monarchy. King Charles announced major reforms to how royal household staff would be treated in the future. An independent ombudsman was appointed to investigate any complaints. All staff members would receive training on their rights, and any form of abuse would result in immediate dismissal. We are committed to ensuring that every person who works for the royal family is treated with dignity and respect. King Charles said the scandal had a lasting impact on the British royal family. Public support for the monarchy dropped to its lowest level in history. Many people questioned whether Britain still needed a royal family at all. If this is how royalty behaves, maybe it's time for a republic, said many protesters outside Buckingham Palace. King Charles worked hard to rebuild the monarchy's reputation, but it would take years to recover from the damage caused by Queen Camilla's actions and the palace's cover-up. James Mitchell became a symbol of courage for speaking up against powerful people. He received thousands of letters from people around the world thanking him for his bravery. "You saved so many people from future abuse," wrote one supporter. "Thank you for showing that ordinary people can stand up to anyone," wrote another. James used his newfound fame to advocate for workers' rights. He spoke at conferences and wrote articles about the importance of protecting vulnerable employees. "No job is worth your dignity," James would tell audiences. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect, no matter who they work for." 1 year after Queen Camilla went to prison, James Mitchell was invited to Buckingham Palace to meet with King Charles. It was a strange moment for James, returning to the place where his nightmare had begun. "Mr. Mitchell," King Charles said, "I want to personally apologize for what happened to you and the other staff members. You showed incredible courage in speaking up." "Thank you, Your Majesty," James replied. "I just hope it never happens again." "It won't," King Charles promised. "We've learned from this terrible mistake." As James left the palace that day, he thought about all the people who had been hurt over the years. He was glad that Queen Camilla was finally facing consequences for her actions. But he was sad that it had taken so long. The story of James Mitchell and Queen Camilla changed the British royal family forever. It showed that no one, no matter how powerful or privileged, should be allowed to abuse other people. It also showed that sometimes one person's courage to speak the truth can change everything. James's decision to report what happened to him had exposed years of abuse and corruption at the highest levels of British society. Queen Camilla's image as a kind, caring member of the royal family was completely destroyed. The truth about her cruel treatment of staff members would never be forgotten. But perhaps most importantly, the scandal led to real changes that would protect future workers from abuse. New laws were passed to strengthen workers' rights. Other organizations began examining their own policies to prevent similar abuse. "Something good came out of something terrible," James Mitchell said in his final interview about the scandal. "If our suffering prevents other people from being hurt, then it was worth speaking up." The palace that had once hidden Queen Camilla's cruelty now stood as a symbol of accountability and justice.